All right.
And there it is. Hey, everybody. This is the Pre-Flask show with everybody here already. So all the boys are in the house, whatever that means. And welcome to the first 15 minutes. And this is where we basically just have a chat. We make sure that our audio and video signals are at least relatively acceptable. And hey, Barden, Harrison, 360 grad. One of these days we'll know your name. If you share the name, then we can call you by name. Otherwise, we'll do avatar and handles. So what is it? So, who is it? The Grumpy Penguin or something like that?
The Grumpy Penguin.
The Grumpy Penguin is the best. So hopefully the Grumpy Penguin will come back today. And this is where we kind of have just an overall chat. So, of course, I have here with me Caleb Pike, and I have Ben Barden. We'll do our official introductions and everything else when we start the show at 6 p.m. Eastern. Ben will be our host for today. He will be steering the ship. And I can hear you guys just fine. Can you hear me okay over on your side?
Good.
Okay, good. So so we open this up right now to everybody who's on the chat so far, who's watching and waiting for the show, to just kind of have a talk about stuff. And if nobody posts anything, then we're just going to start talking about stuff, which we like to do. Caleb and I were on the phone for about an hour today, just chatting about some of the announcements that have been happening and kind of where things are going and stuff like that. So we'll see how that goes. What do you guys want to talk about for the next 10 minutes before we get this thing going? What's everybody got?
I'll let you and Ben chat up. I'm going to actually, I totally forgot to post on YouTube. So I'm going to do that right now. And
okay, so you want to just go icon? Do you want to just go icon,
sure,
like DSLR Video Shooter icon? How do I do that, by the way?
It's the turn camera off, the like / camera icon button.
And then you can load that with a logo.
I think it's just your account. Whatever your account logo is, it shows that. So if I mute my camera, you can still hear me, but it just shows the logo.
So what happens when I do mine? You ready?
Yep. It's your face.
Just my ugly mug.
Oh, beautiful golden face.
Thank Jessica for that beautiful photograph. Okay, there you go.
Very nice.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
All right, I'm going to go logo here. I'll be right back.
Oh, here we go. We got a joke. You want to read it, Ben? It sounds better with a British accent. Let's go. I'll say English. I'm sorry.
Two toothpicks are walking through the woods. As a hedgehog overtakes them, one toothpick says to the other, "If I knew there's a bus driving, I wouldn't have walked on foot."
All right, I'm going to take that one in. Is this more of...
No, I get that. Yeah. Not. Yes.
Okay, good. Yes. All right, cool. What's up, Bart? Ricardo, how you guys doing? We got almost 20 in the queue so far, and here we are. Ben is going to be steering the ship today for this episode, but this is the Pre-Flask show. Pre-Flask means the only thing that you're allowed to drink, this is just an arbitrary rule, by the way, is just water, maybe with a little lemon, or I have a little lime in mine. But really, that's not true. We can't see you, so you can drink whatever you want, but we don't start drinking until the show starts. And we do not necessarily recommend that you drink beverages with alcoholic content, but you are free to do so if it is legal and it is what you enjoy. Bart's doing great. Just got a great deal on the full set of Schneider Xenon full frame lenses. Very excited. Nice job, Bart. Well done. Congratulations. I'm sure you'll be creating some nice images with that. So looking forward to that. Yeah, we got about another 10 on the Pre-Flask. Caleb just came back. He was off doing social, as we like to say. I don't know what that could mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but really he was just promoting on the YouTubes that we have our episode coming up. So Harrison, best high and long throw cine servo. Oh, I've got a 70-20. coming into test. Oh, nice. Yeah, 17 to 120 is a beast. That is one
That's the big boy, right?
Yeah, I mean
that's the big
like
daddy.
That's like a documentary filmmaker's dream if you have like a Sherpa to help you with your camera system, kind of, right? Tony, what's going on? Happy New Year to you. Is there anything better? It might not be, depending on what you're shooting. I mean, there is stuff that's better depending on what project you're working on. But people swear for television production and also for a lot of film stuff. A lot of those ingenue lenses, they're kind of like the kings of the castle when it comes to versatile, should we call them variable primes, as we also like to call zoom lenses. Yeah. Or maybe we don't. Maybe Caleb doesn't like that.
No, I think that's the way I shoot. I don't think I really ever zoom in while filming, but that's probably my crappy photo lens usage / background that causes that.
I don't think that's true. I mean, I think that it's motivated if you're shooting The Office or Modern Family or Parks and Rec or a show that has that kind of pseudo doc pseudo verite kind of style, then I think that it works very effectively. And another show that they actually did it in a lot, if you guys remember, was the reboot for Battlestar Galactica. They had a lot of that kind of camera moving, and then they would kind of like punch in to a single or a two shot, and then they'd come back out, and they'd actually use it on exteriors as well. They'd be like out in space, and you'd see all the spaceships, and they would like zoom in, and then come back out and do all this crazy shit. And yeah, so there you go. What do we got here, Bart? Let's hear what Bart's, Ben, what is Bart saying down here? What kind of craziness is he talking about?
What is what? Sorry, I just had a little internet issue.
Oh, you did? Okay, why don't you handle that? So, Caleb, Bart has got a drink that he's sharing with us.
He does. Bart, congratulations on the lenses, dude. That's super dank.
Yeah.
Wow. Those, I was researching those after he had talked to me elsewhere about them, and they look pretty sick. And interestingly, not to make it all about the lens, but interesting, the pricing on those. If you pick up a used set, I for some reason I was expecting those to be like redonkulous, but they're not. They're not, the most expensive thing in the world for their value. Anyway, what he's drinking, my beer of choice, is a Jailbreak Brewing White Russian Cream Ale brewed with coffee and vanilla.
Say that 100 times. Wow.
It's a brewery just 30 minutes from my house. It doesn't come in Ben's syrup bottle, though. Oh, man.
This is the bleach bottle, I think you'll find.
Yeah.
Sounds like the pumpkin spice latte of beers. That's shots fired, I think, from Chris.
No, he downed 12 of them, though. So Ryan is asking if I'm the infamous Reddit C47 as well. No, and I'm not Banksy either, but I have no idea who the infamous Reddit.
Shocking.
You don't seem like a Reddit guy. Are you not a Reddit user? I want to be a Reddit user, but I just don't. I need to get on board with the whole Reddit life.
Yeah, is it good? I mean, there's so much information. It looks
amazing. It's so much.
It's like the Alexandria of the millennials.
Yeah,
that's really probably that wrong. I mean, I'm talking about the library, of course. If you've been around for a while historically, not you guys, but sometimes I wonder if I'm saying something and I sound like it doesn't make any sense. Darren, no CES this year. No CES any year. I mean, I think for all three of us, gentlemen, it's just not a show, at least right now, that has factored in. I think,
but it's changing though, isn't it? Do you know there's a lot more crossover now, and the last couple of years with NAB, where that had always been the big show where everything got announced in kind of our world, and that's now been a lot of that stuff's getting announced before the show, and it isn't everything tied into it anymore. And the stuff that's coming in CES, which kind of crosses over. I'd go if it was a little closer and didn't cost me so much money to get there.
No, I would too. I think probably in some respects for Caleb at the moment, I don't even know though, because I mean it's not the type of show where like NAB you sort of have that little what do we call that? It's kind of like and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but it's kind of like this little Asia section of NAB, where you have all of these primarily Chinese, but some Korean companies that have all of this technology that they're showing, some of which you're seeing in other people's products, and some of it that we won't really see in a big marketed way until like NAB the following year. And I don't think that CES has anything like that, does it? Anybody?
I don't know. I really don't. I've never been. I like the idea of going just to meet other tech channels, people that I watch that aren't necessarily video related. But there's a bunch of video people going this year, but they haven't seen much except for that sharp 8K, whatever
concept
the heck
camera. Yeah,
everyone's super excited about. But I mean, you know,
we had this chat the other week.
Wait a minute. Part-time Films is here. Stop. Part-time Films is here. So just everybody relax now. They're okay. But wait a minute. The grumpy penguin is not here. So that's a little upset.
Bad. I'm really upset. Part-time, go find Grumpy.
Yeah, go get Grumpy.
You guys should be friends, I feel.
Part-time. So hey, what's up, Memo? That's Guillermo Montesinos, longtime friend of mine since teenagerdom. So we've got so much great stuff on the video side: cameras, lenses, lights, monitors from Donald Taylor II. I feel like YouTube content on the audio side is so basic. Is there just inherently less to be said about audio? Yes and no, but it doesn't have the sexy factor that people are looking for when they're talking about ProRes RAW over HDMI 2.0 and the new light that has RGBW and all of that kind of stuff. So so I would say that it's clearly, you know, the larger percentage of the importance of everything, but it's not necessarily what I should probably click on myself that we should be talking about. So yeah, what's up, Jordan? Good to have you. Good to have everybody here. We're just a few minutes away from our official start for Camera and Flask episode 12, which means we're about 3 months into this, guys, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa. Say that again. 3 months?
Well, it's 12 episodes, and we do it once a week. It's a little shy of 3 months, but it's
that's insanity.
In fact,
because we missed week, so we're over.
We've missed two episodes because of what was it? It was Halloween and New Year's were the two that were like the funky cold Medinas. So we didn't do those. So so here we are. Good. Well, I think, gentlemen, since we're having this little talk about CES, it's a year away, but let's just keep chatting about it. I would love it if we we could meet up more than just NAB. And if we have a reason to be there and we can create some content around it, that would be great. So we'll see.
I'd love to.
Yeah, that'd be great. Actually, this on this week's episode of Gearbox 2.0, I talk a little bit about ProRes RAW over HDMI, but there was some questions about maybe us doing some sort of meetup. I don't know if we're going to do that, but there are plans for the three of us to at least do a show on the Wednesday at NAB. We have to kind of sort out the particulars of that and make sure that we have enough of a connection and a space to do it. But it would be the first time that we'll do Camera and Flask all together in the same space, and we might even get a guest or two to come on board. Eric Naso has already thrown his name into the hat, and he'd be a fun one because he always has a good time. He's a great guy. So good. What's the temperature in the barn? The temperature in the barn is it's warmer than last week. He's not got his hat on today. No, it's warmer than last week. It's not warm, but it's warmer than last week. And I got the little heater going, so we're okay. You can still see my breath. This is another reason why CES would be great. Getting out into the warm desert in appeals massively. Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Darren. Okay, good. So, I read that comment, Part-Time Films. Grumpy Penguin, where are you? So, Eric is radtacular. He's actually at CES right now for the first time. We had a big chat before he left. There we are, Joe. You're here. All right, nice. I like it. You are here. Did I hear Panasonic announce something recently? We did. You did start drinking early, though, Baron. You probably did both of those things. So here we are. It's 3 p.m. I turn this over to Captain of our ship this week for Camera and Flask, Episode 12, Mr. Ben Barden.
Thank you very much. Welcome, one and all, to Camera and Flask, Episode 12. So we do this every single Wednesday at various times all over the world. So I'm midnight in the Czech Republic, and the co-hosts, Jem Schofield at 3 p.m. in the Pacific Northwest, and Caleb Pike in the Midwest. You are 5 p.m. Have I got that right?
Yeah. No, 6. My bad. No, 5. 5. You got it. You got it. I don't even know what time it is.
Good. So we do this every week, and we have a different topic that we're going to chat about. And as always, this is very much a interactive session, and we want you to get involved on the chat. I'm going to get you two to introduce yourselves first, straight over to the Midwest, and Caleb Pike.
Right. Caleb Pike.
How are you?
DSLR Video Shooter. Good to see you, brother.
And you?
Yeah. Bitterly cold and windy out here. But that's the scoop. That's my story.
Jem, how's things with you?
Going well. Jem Schofield of the C47. Welcome to the channel. If you have not been here before, I run a production company, and I'm also a DP, and create a lot of educational content. So there you go. And Ben, why don't you do a little intro for yourself, and then I'll have you, even though you're hosting, I'm going to have you start the next and probably most important part of the show.
Of course. So my name is Ben Barden. I'm a photographer, filmmaker, DP, sometime educator, mainly working in the UK, but really all over the place. But I live in the Czech Republic, in a little village in the middle of nowhere for some explicable reason. And we're now on to the pivotal part of the show that greases the wheels of everything else. What are we drinking this week? So I'm going to start with Jem this time. Jem, what have you got?
Well, I don't know about you guys, but at least for me, you know, everything shuts down about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks before the end of the year with a lot of companies. And because New Year's Eve was on a Monday, which means New Year's Day was on a Tuesday, and people were coming back to work on Wednesday, but probably still had hangovers, they didn't want to do anything at all. And so this week, for the last 3 days, has been pure insanity. So as a result of that pure insanity, I'm actually breaking out the Bookers. Okay, this is I don't know if I've had the Bookers on Camera and Flask yet, unless it was one of our test episodes from a long time ago. This particular bottle, and it does vary, is 128.1 proof. So it is 64.05% alcohol. It is a bourbon. It is Jim Beam's, I would say, whatever you call it. It's their top shelf thing. And you do cut this one with water, by the way. I do allow myself to drink bourbon with ice, not scotch ever, but this one I cut with water. And once you put some water in here, a little more than you would with a single malt, it's quite lovely. So there's my Bookers for everybody. Okay, who's next?
Beautiful glass.
Yes, thank you. Is this going to be Caleb now?
Yeah, this is it, Caleb.
All right. We're doing makers 46.
Nice. Oh, we're bourbon in it. But it doesn't look very much in there. What's going on?
I poured it already. The last. it's
Holy
gone.
Crap. Okay. That's one
you're just going to inhale that with your nose.
There we go. We're all ready to go. I'm set. I'm prepared.
All right.
It's not full roses. How about you, Sir Ben?
So this is, I think, the last whiskey in my cabinet at the moment that I haven't drunk on here yet. So this is a 21-year-old.
3 months later.
Yeah.
It was only a big unpleasant birthday last year. Yielded a lot of scotch. So this is from Tobermory. So it's an island whiskey. It's 21 years old, and this is probably the most special one that I have.
Oh my goodness!
This is it's a limited edition. You can't buy this anywhere really. It was only this. I've mentioned this company before. A friend of my mother's. He finds these interesting sort of limited edition runs. And this is that company's called Dream Drams. If you want to have a look and see the interesting stuff they have, this is number 40. I don't know if you can see that.
No.
Yeah, I have some face tracking, so it won't work. But it's number 40 of 210 bottles. That's all there is of this. Number 40 being significant because that was the unpleasant birthday. And this is 47.5%. This was a present from my mum. And this definitely needs a little water. It's really smoky and, yeah, beautiful. Typical island.
All right. Nice choice, Harrison, on the Oban 18 year.
Oh, yeah.
Limited, yeah. So, or Oban. Is it Oban or Oban?
Oban.
It depends. Oban. That's the way I say it. So this is great. So let's just have a little cheers to everybody for this week. We get started here, and Slanjava and all that good stuff.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Oh yeah, it tastes as good as I remember. Okay, it's been a while since I've had that. All right, we got some chicken soup talk going on right now. It looks like some healing going on.
Chris has got concussion land going on. Oof.
Yeah.
What?
I hope you're okay, dude.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Tucker's
coming.
rocking some water. Nice.
How did we get onto soup? How did we get onto chicken soup?
Because of it's apparently not only for curing colds but curing concussions. Is that right?
Wow.
I mean, well, let's do it, and then you guys can drink whatever you're drinking. It does not have to have juice in it. It can just be water, coffee, whatever you guys want. But
or 14 coffees in vodka or whatever the heck Bart's drinking.
Have you guys ever had? By the way, have you ever had tequila in coffee? It's actually very good. Yeah,
sounds like a good way to drink tequila.
It's really like an añejo, like a really. It's just reposado. Okay, good. We're done with that. Okay, good. Just so I wanted to throw that out there for somebody to try after a meal. It would be something you put into your coffee instead of Sambuca or maybe an Irish coffee. Yeah.
So, quick question on that: would you put really good tequila in that, or is that kind of the normal shooty stuff? Because the only tequila I've ever had that I liked was one that you recommended.
Yeah,
we were in a restaurant in Vegas sometime.
I take a different stance here. For me, it's like life is too short. Put the good shit into everything. So if I'm going to have a margarita, I'm going to put good tequila into the margarita, and I'm going to put good whatever into whatever. I want to taste the best that I can taste of that experience. So I don't want shitty stuff just because it's being mixed with something. I want the good shit mixed with something, and hopefully the stuff you're mixing it with is good as well. That's all I got for you.
So like Van Winkle in like a Coke.
No. You're going. I'm not going to put a $200 or $150 whiskey into something. I'm saying within reason. So I'm going to do a Powers Gold into an Irish coffee, but I might actually put some yellow spot in there sometimes, or even just a regular single malt if I want to try what it tastes like. Who cares?
Gotcha.
It's all going in, and if it tastes good, I'm happy. All right, Ben, what are we doing today?
All right. So
I like 43. Oh, that's good stuff. Yes. Sorry. Guillermo mentioned 43. Have you ever put that into coffee? I did that in Mexico City. No. Delicious. Oh, all right. That's another one. Everybody take note. Delish. Okay. Here we go.
So, all right. Away from the drink momentarily. So this week, we're going to talk about workflow, and was slightly struggling to work out as to which point we beginning and end with this. So I just figured we go right through, but quite briefly. And there's so much in this that I think we can then do other episodes on. So please, if there's things that you find are interesting and that you'd like us to talk more about, let us know and we can hang another episode on that, because there's just so much. So it really is a brief overview. So we want to cover kind of a job, well, that's how I've done this, is doing a job from kind of that initial starting planning phase right through to client delivery and the phases that we go through that. Does that kind of tie in with what you two have thought through?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go for it.
All right, who's going first?
Jem.
Okay, I'll do it.
Jem was sounding confident.
I volunteer you.
No, that's fine. I'll do it. So if we go back to what Ben was talking about, which is sort of the planning part, for me, basically across the boards, it's all about the proposal for me. And I don't mean sitting there laboring over anything, but for me, the viewpoint I always have is, and it always burns me if I don't do it this way, is spending time, non-billable time, with the prospective client and figuring out what the scope of the project is. And when I write a proposal, I really write a proposal. I mean, I am putting crew on hold, on soft holds for things. They can obviously let me know if something else comes up. I'm trying to determine dates of project, put soft holds there. And when I write the proposal, it becomes the blueprint for the entire project. So it's not I'm going to create a 3 to 5 minute video about blah. It's going to be broken down into like a little overview, which is a 1 paragraph. Here's what the project is. And I usually put dates in there and any other information and what the project is for. And then I basically break it down into the pre-production, the production, and the post-production. Then I have a budget section, which is a spreadsheet, which basically shows what the budget is for the project. And then I have my project terms, which is it doesn't include this because I've talked about all the things it includes. And then what I'll do sometimes when I create those proposals is I will break those down and extract portions of them, generally everything that's not the business part of it, so like the budget and the project terms and that kind of stuff, and I will distribute it to key crew members as well, because if you're hiring a DP on a project, they need to know what this project is all about. The same thing for a sound recordist or other key people who are going to be working on post-production for the project. So sometimes I'll write that and distribute it even before the project is done. Not usually, but sometimes I will, to get an idea of what the different people think it's going to cost to do it. But after doing it for a long time, I kind of have a sense of how much my crews are going to cost and things like that. And then I really know what it is that we're going to be doing. And then I can just deal with, when we get into the pre-production and then the production phase, of just sort of problem solving the stuff that comes up instead of trying to backtrack and figure out what the actual project is. So that's kind of my way of doing it. And so at the same time, when you tackle it that way, what winds up happening is you start to figure out what equipment you're going to be using on the project. And you start to drive the project in terms of, is this going to be a mirrorless camera-based project? Is this going to be a project that's going to be a digital cinema camera that I already own? Is it going to be a rental, and are we going to have to get an ARRI or some other camera system? And we start to talk about lights, and all of those things start to come into the conversation. So by the time I'm done submitting and finalizing a proposal with a client, because it is fully budgeted out, I already know basically what I need for the project. And then we move forward with, you know, the actual planning of the smaller things. You know, and so the types of projects that I'm primarily doing, they run the gamut, but I would say that the most common type of project that I'm doing right now is creating either videos for sort of like corporate doc style for things like fundraisers and you know, things that have to do with universities and things like that. They're sort of company story type things. So, you know, you're a winery or something like that, and it's more, again, doc style. But more than anything, I'm creating educational content. So I'm just finishing up a 4-part series for Small HD, which is a sponsored series, but I get to have my own voice in, and I'm doing kind of what I do when I create videos for companies like Canon and things like that. So those are generally 2 to 3 camera shoots, and crews are pretty small. And I'd say that those are, you know, the vast majority of the types of projects that I'm doing. And then there are some exceptions to that where I do a commercial job or, you know, things that are in other spaces. So I think that that's, you know, part one. And then once that's been finalized, then we go into actually figuring out just sort of like all the other particulars, which are more having to do with logistics than anything else. And then, of course, I have to decide when I'm writing that proposal with the client, am I doing that production here where I'm based, or am I traveling, which I do a lot. So those are also things that factor in. So I do actually price out hotels. I figure out what flights are going to be at around that time period. And you have to give yourself a little buffer. Maybe at some point we'll do this, but I do teach and have workshops on proposals and budgets and planning and that kind of stuff. You you know, and then we get down to business, and then we actually do the project. But a lot of it has changed in some respects. I'll try to keep this short so we can kind of bump to everybody else. But I'll say that the two things that have changed the most for me in production and in post-production is, number one, in production, if I can, I have the editor on set or on location. Yeah. Because that has sped up post-production markedly, because basically what they become is the data wrangler on set, and they start organizing everything. But they also sometimes come over when we're actually shooting, and the editor can actually say, it would be great if I had this. I have to find that balance where it doesn't seem like they're being a director. So it's a communication between myself and that editor. And on set, they're basically a data wrangler / assistant editor. But it does give me... on that? Yeah, go for it. I'm ready.
So does that actually, do you think that saves you money? Because I have this question all the time. So if you're sending stuff off to an editor, you're paying them, depending on how much data there is to go through, but you're paying them quite a lot of time to get familiar with all of that content. Whereas if they've been on set, they already have the picture of what they're already starting cutting it in their head anyway, but also they know exactly what's what. They remember, oh, that second take, even if without notes, they've got an idea of what you're dealing with. So that cuts out quite a lot of time. And I just wonder if, obviously from a practical point of view, it's great, but do you find that it saves money as well?
I think it does. It makes post so much better all around in terms of communication, because the person is there and you can even say to them, that was a rubbish take, you know, forget that one. And they make a note of that. And this was a great one, you know, make a note of that. It definitely speeds up the post. It's a hard question to answer, Ben, because I don't always look at it that way. They're clearly becoming part of the crew, so they're one of my crew expenses. But I would say long-term, it's probably reducing the amount of time that they're spending in post. But I'm almost more interested in finding a project price with an editor and saying, here's your role, and just having it go smoother. Because, I mean, honestly, long-term, if I'm doing better as a business, I want the people that I've been working with for years to be making more money over time than they were before. I don't necessarily want them to be making less money or doing it cheaper. But no, you know, yeah, but I do understand what you're saying. But I think the answer is yes. But it does make the process so much more efficient overall, because they're already familiar with what they're doing, and they basically just get back into the edit suite, wherever that is, and they just start cutting because they've already organized and they've already put all that stuff together. So I think it's, you know, that's been a huge change for me. And then the second biggest change for me has actually, and it'll sound like I'm an advertisement for it, but it's not, has been Frame.io. It's completely changed the way we do post-production, and essentially both from an internal and a client-based contact. It's just totally changed how fast we do post. And so the fact that I can set up an internal project for a particular client and what we're doing for them, and I can review the rough cuts from the editor, and I can annotate, I can, you know, give my comments. If you're using Final Cut Pro 10 now, you can even just have that all just show up with the new workflow extensions. And I hope we see that with other NLEs even more so.
It works in Premiere, doesn't it, as well? It has done for a long time.
Yeah, they have that kind of functionality. And then what we do is we publish a client-based one. And what we're doing now, and I've mentioned this, I think, on one show before, is on this new project that I'm about to do, we're actually going to set up a dedicated Frame.io project for that client. So they're essentially, it's just a billable in their budget, that it's $45 a month. So it doesn't get mucked up with all my stuff. It's just the client's Frame.io account. We add collaborators. And I have to say, it saves so much time in terms of the overall workflow. The client can even download the video. When we're done with the video, if we upload a high enough version of it, high enough quality version, they can actually just download it right from Frame.io, and they can start using it and distributing it. So, I mean, there's just some really huge advantages all around in terms of stuff. And of course, the chat is blowing up here, not based on what I'm talking about, but there's just a lot of questions here. So I'm going to hopefully one of you guys have been keeping track of some of these things. But Yeah, I would say that. And then delivery is always client-based. It's pretty easy nowadays. I mean, you know, if we're shooting and posting in UHD, we really just need to know what do they need it in. It's almost always some flavor of H.264, you know, MP4 file or whatever it's going to be. We always make a ProRes master for most of our clients now. Whether we give it to them or they ask for it, it gets created. And you know, the rest is just basically coordinating with the client in terms of having access to their account so we can upload the files, or just getting it to them. And then sometimes hard drives go around, you know, when there's just bigger files to distribute to them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's kind of a little bit of an overview, but at least gives a little insight into that whole having the assistant editor, data wrangler, you know, role, if you can do it on productions, be part of the actual production part of it. And then Frame.io totally changing how we do posts and saving us just a ridiculous amount of time. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
That's what I got for you.
I'm gonna come back to you on the Frame.io when I do my bit, because I'm really interested in moving over. I use Vimeo for that at the moment. For a lot of what you're using Frame.io for.
Oh, don't get me started on Vimeo. Don't get me started.
Run away, run.
So I'll when I do my bit, I'll talk about that and why I've just given them more money and why it really pained me.
I felt like with the emails I was getting at the end of the year, and in no uncertain terms, I said I'm leaving. I felt like the mafia had come over to my house and was doing a shakedown on me at Vimeo. It was ridiculous. Okay, I'm done with that. I'm not even going there. It just the tone of the emails. It was like I was being assaulted or something like that. Caleb's keeping his head down. I don't know about that. But
all right, well let's do Caleb's, and then I'm going to come back and talk a bit more about that at the end of mine as well.
Okay, but so and anything that we want to talk about? We've got probably 10 or 15 comments here. Anything? That,
the guys and gals are killing it. I essentially asked what kind of productions they do, just kind of get an idea of what we're looking at here. Lots of good comments and discussions, so we can definitely come back through there and comb through it. And there's a lot of good stuff in there. And they're also talking about what we're talking about, so it's great.
Question there from Chris. Yeah. What do you guys like about one-man crew production?
Nothing.
Nothing. It's out of necessity. I hate working on my own. I hate it.
It's a majority of the time,
but I hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't be doing camera and flash from the Vimeo booth. No, none of us will. That's amazing.
I'm still giving them money. They like me.
No.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I think that there's another comment. You can add storage to your Frame.io account for a smaller fee than upgrading to a more expensive plan. That is absolutely true. And I've heard little birdies say that the storage capacities might go up. The only reason I'm doing it in this particular case is I want to separate. I just want, it's almost like dedicating hard drives or a RAID to a particular project or a particular client. It just sort of segments it, and it's their world that I can just say anything that relates to this client we can do with this Frame.io account. We do use, I use the C47 Frame.io account for lots of different clients, but when it becomes something that's a longer term, bigger project, anything that's going to last more than months, then it might make sense to do a dedicated. All right, cool. So Caleb, what you got?
Before I jump in, just wanted to say to everybody, first of all, thanks for joining us and being in the chat. Lots of cool stuff. People talk about what they're doing. Lots of good questions. I love, I believe it's AP Studios talking about how to get into getting these jobs, because we're talking about our workflow, but actually how to acquire them. That's probably one of the hardest things. So maybe we'll talk about that in the future. And if everyone hasn't, or if some of you haven't, please hit the subscribe button down below. We do this every single week. And I'd love to see all of you here and hang out with us and us with you. So with that said, should I go over my YouTube workflow?
Yeah.
Since both of you have kind of a similar,
different,
right?
What we're talking about.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'd love it.
Okay, so for me, there's no client stuff. I don't do sponsorships at this point, so there's less of that. So that's awesome that you guys get to cover all of that information. So for me, it starts with kind of a general script and outline. produce a video every single week, around 10 minutes. And I try to make them more than just talking heads. So, you know, trying to figure out a way to continue doing that and do it faster. And then we also produce guides, long form, between 4 to 8 hours long. And we're trying to do that more regularly. So that's kind of the two things I'm working with content wise. So yeah, getting some kind of idea on the board. I just dump everything into Evernote. If I have an idea, it goes there. I've got a couple different, you know, notes there, the really good ideas. And then the ones that I just kind of the first thought, they go in there. Flesh those out. I don't do any, you know, teleprompter stuff. Just doesn't feel natural to me. So I have to usually write it out, at least a good outline, if not word for word, just to work through it. And then I just essentially have breaking it down into 3 categories for actual production, which are just the talking head, me sitting in front of the camera, B-roll of anything we're talking about, and then sometimes some voiceover. If, you know, I'm in a basement, so there's children above me, so sometimes it's impossible to actually film. And then workflow wise for that, I don't know how in depth we want to get, but I kind of set the studio up to where I've got this area for editing and voiceover. I do have an assistant editor just recently who's been working with me. And then in the main studio space, there's kind of the set, if you will. And then I have a whole half of it that's just B-roll stuff, different surfaces, tables, backdrops, all that stuff. Usually takes a full day to do all the photography, the filming. And then when it comes to post-production, because we're doing so much content, we're often referencing, or I'm often referencing other content and stuff I've already shot. I try to do a pretty good job of keeping everything organized and backlogged. So nothing ever gets deleted. Everything's shot in 4K to try to be somewhat feature-proof. And I do cheat all the time and crop in and animate stuff. So I bring everything over and I import it into, someone was talking about earlier, their QNAP setup using a NAS, which is what I do as well. So we have a QNAP Thunderbolt NAS. So 2 people can connect and edit off of it at the same time. And I use Final Cut. So my assistant editor can be editing one library and I'll be working on another library on the same device. So it's great. She can finish the assistant edit work and then close the library and I can open it up and immediately work on it, which is phenomenal instead of having 2 separate, you know, RAID systems. So that's set up for, I can't remember how much, like 24 terabytes or so. So that's just current work. Once we're done editing, 2 things happen. Number 1, it goes to our server, which is in another room. It's essentially a Hackintosh or a Mac with a ton of storage attached to it. And that's, you know, if we ever need to access it and grab some old footage and throw it in a new video, we can do that. It's on our network. And then the second thing, which is kind of new for me, is using Google Drive or G Drive, using Google Suites. So I believe if the threshold is like $50 or $60 a month, if that's what your bill is or invoice from Google for G Suite, which is crazy powerful, you get unlimited storage with them. So now what we're doing is everything is going up to the cloud. And traditionally, I really like everything wrapped up in the Final Cut library because I love that you can drag a library over or compress it and move it to another drive, and literally everything in that project stays with it. No offline, you know, media or anything like that. Now what I can do, and this is amazing and it changes everything, is right when we're in the archive phase, so everything's done, uploaded, shared, we back it up to the server, and then I'll actually go ahead and set the media that's normally wrapped up in that library. I'll put it in a separate folder. So within Final Cut, you can actually just hit a button and say, put all the video and audio and everything in a folder for me, and here's where I want you to put it. And then I upload all that. I zip the Final Cut library because anything other than a Mac with Final Cut doesn't know what that is, and it'll actually like die. So you want to zip it when you move it around to non-Apple stuff. So we zip that, and that's only a couple megabytes. That goes up, and then all the footage just gets dumped up there with it. And what's amazing is on Google, in a browser, you can watch the files. And so you can go through and like, oh, I want that one juicy shot we shot 2 years ago. And you can find it, watch it, and download it. And you can watch
that almost like just a remotely attached drive in the same way that you use Dropbox. Nice.
Yeah, well, and what's nice is all this stuff, I have it set up to be disconnected. So I can't, like, it's not on my system because we're talking like hundreds of terabytes.
But you're browsing it like you were browsing a stock library almost.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. And what's crazy is the stuff, you can watch stuff that I can't watch with QuickTime. So like Panasonic, 4K or Cinema 4K stuff from Panasonic or their anamorphic files, you can't watch them. You have to use Final Cut to view it.
Right.
Or some other software, but you can watch it on Google. It's crazy.
Wow. So
with that service, sorry, go on.
No, you go first because I'll remember mine, I think.
All right. So with that service, when you've got files up there, if you were wanting to then share a file that you have on your G drive with somebody, can you do that in the same way that you would use that with Dropbox? You've got this huge library on there and you need to ping a file over to a collaborator. Yeah.
Yeah. You can set up, it's just like, using Finder essentially. You can integrate it with Finder, but on their web interface, you can create folders with different groups of people and users. So all you have to do is have, I believe it's 5 like email addresses attached. So there's me, my assistant editor, and then I have a couple other email addresses for various parts of the business. And that adds up to, I think it's $10 per one of those accounts, if you will. And so that adds up to, so my bill is $60 a month, but I had no idea that also gave me unlimited,
unlimited
bandwidth and space. So there's no limits as to how much you can upload per month.
Wow.
So when I'm not streaming, the machine is just like constantly sending stuff up.
So can I ask you a question? I want to ask you a question. So I don't want this to digress into a Final Cut Pro 10 thing because we're using both Final Cut and Premiere Pro for different projects. Like the new project that we just started is going to be Premiere Pro, and then we use Final Cut for other things. But are you saying that your standard workflow is that when you're working on a project, you keep everything in the library, you don't leave files where they are, and you let it live there as you're building it? And then what you do is at the end, you essentially take all of that stuff out of the library and put it into, and you still have it connected to that Final Cut Pro thing. I'm assuming it's keeping all of the render files and everything else in the library if you don't purge those.
Correct.
But it's all the assets, and it's basically pushing all the assets related to your events and putting that into its own folder structure, correct?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, I don't need to talk about it anymore. That's fine. Because again, I don't want it to become like a whole thing. Amazing about the unlimited. So go ahead.
One thing I'll throw in that I totally forgot. When we import footage, this is going to sound dumb to a lot of people, but I essentially import twice. In Final Cut, there's this amazing feature, and even if you don't have Final Cut, this is, I think, a good idea. There's a button down there that says Archive Card or something. I think it's just Archive. Create Archive. That's what it is. So you have an SD card or SSD plugged in. You hit that button, and it creates a bit-for-bit clone of that drive. So down the road, let's say you screwed up and somehow footage is gone somehow. You just go back to that archive and you click on it, and it essentially acts as if it's literally, you can eject it and everything. It's a complete perfect clone of the drive or card. So I do that for everything that's coming in. That means I'm doubling what's on the RAID over here, or the server, or the NAS, and that gets deleted once the project is done.
Got it.
So the beauty is, because it happens all the time, when you import in Final Cut and something gets funky and then the footage is gone, the card is gone, and it says like, where's the camera? Or it's wants you to re-import from the camera or something weird. So we do that, and then I also import directly to the library in Final Cut. So the footage is there twice. It sucks if you only have a small amount of space on your RAID or whatever. but I think it's worth it because, you know, you're going to delete it when the project's done, but that extra peace of mind is amazing.
And you're doing 1+0 right now in your RAID? Is that right? You're doing a RAID 10?
I think I'm doing 6 now, just
Okay.
because I'm extra scared.
God,
So I
that
haven't,
scares
you
me.
know, yeah.
But I'm also scared of 5 and 6 because it's like, you know, one goes down and you're rebuilding and cooking in the oven and all that kind of stuff. And it seems like 1+0 might be the best. Yeah.
I think 6 is the most redundant.
It is the most redundant, but
it's the safest move. Yeah. It's slower.
Yeah.
But it's the safest.
1.0 seems to think the way I think. I know that you're getting a lot less storage, but it's like I'm mirroring, and okay, it's a mirror, but
well, 1+0 is redundant, but it's also fast. Not to get everyone's minds exploded over all this. Last thing I'll say, and then I'm out, and then we're over to Ben. I have a drive connected to this NAS that backs up constantly. It's a cheap 8 terabyte or whatever Seagate. And then I cycle that once a week into a safe, just as a local thing. And then I use Backblaze to back everything else up. That's it. The end.
All right.
Sorry.
So just on that, so mine is actually running on RAID 0, so my main working drives. And I do that for the same reason that I ride motorbikes.
I was just going to say, blows your hair back.
Exactly. Yeah, it's exciting, man. Brilliant.
Ticking time bombs.
All right. So just responding to some of the chat that's been going on, talking about one-man crew and working with other people within that. So that's something I do more and more. And again, the question about what do you like about working in a one-man crew, and we all instantly said absolutely nothing. So if you are in that circumstance, and there are certain jobs that you know just don't have the budget to crew up, but when they are, go make friends with your competitors. And like that's kind of what I do. So a guy that I work with an awful lot, he's brilliant. He does the same sort of stuff as I do. He's a drone pilot as well. So I use him on a lot of jobs, and now vice versa. We work together a lot. And if I can get him on board on a job, then I do as much as humanly possible. So I'll go into the workflow. I don't want to sort of go over too much of what Jem was talking about because there's a lot of crossover on there. But so for me, the first is that kind of initial client contact. For me, it's often that they're coming to you wanting an idea. They want a film. Often they don't actually know why they want a film. That's something, I don't know if you get that a lot. They go like, we've been told we've got this marketing guy and we need a film. And then it's that initial conversation is, well, why? What does that film need to do? And who's the audience for it? And then I go away and come up with a proposal. And normally I'm writing something, so I'm doing a treatment. And then at that point, they commit. And then we start doing the planning, much in the same way that Jem does, although probably not in quite as much detail as Jem does. But then it's planning the thing out. It's storyboarding it. And for short corporate things, I'm not talking about storyboarding things and actually drawing, but getting a shot-by-shot list so that when we go shoot it, that's a very efficient process. And not all jobs do this. I'm just doing this on the basis of, I had in my mind a job I've done recently that was with Jago, the guy I work with a lot, which was a promo for a holiday park in the Lake District. And going through, figuring it all out, getting the talent in that we needed for that. And then briefing with him, sorting the kit list out. We've talked about this before. I normally do a run through, particularly if I'm traveling. This one was quite local. So if you're having problems with things, it's not the end of the world to go back and get something. But normally I build things up, particularly if I'm doing interviews and things as well on a job. I'll actually build stuff up as I'm packing things. So I build the whole setup and then pack it into the bag from the setup. So there's nothing that's missing. And that saved me on multiple occasions.
I like that.
Yeah.
It works really well. If you've got time, obviously there's jobs where you don't because it's time consuming, but it is a lifesaver. And then going on to the shoot itself, just keeping tabs on if there's 2 of us shooting, keeping tabs on all that data, trying not to go right over cards. And again, we did a whole episode on data management, and go back and watch that to go into sort of detail about how that works on set. And then coming back in the evenings, everything backed up to 2 drives. And again, we've talked about that in a lot of detail in that episode. And then it's renaming things as well, because there's certain camera systems that have horrible file structures. Sony cameras particularly do this, that you put a new card and it just starts at 1 again. Same file names over and over again. It's very easy when you're being busy and there's a lot of data flying around for you to overwrite files. So renaming things before they're coming into the computer, backing up on the 2 drives. Then once we're getting in, if this is a job that's then ending at this point and I'm handing that off to an editor and I'm just be working as a cameraman, which are the nicest in terms of the general workflow and stress levels, that's the end of it. But if this is something that I'm editing, and again, sort of one-man crew, and there's a lot of us that do everything right the way through the process, then that data management thing comes in. So the backups are done, and then it's brought into the working drive. And then it's deciding which piece of software I'm going to use, because I know you two both use Final Cut pretty much fairly exclusively.
I don't think Jem is, but I am.
Yeah, I'm not exclusive. So I cut in Final Cut for the stuff that I'm doing. So anything that's related to the YouTube channel, and a lot of the stuff that we do now for educational content is Final Cut.
Right.
But there are client-driven projects like this one that we just started at the beginning of this year, which is going to be could definitely be Premiere Pro. It just depends. It depends on what we're doing. We actually kind of gone back and forth with the client on this one, and in the end, it may be that they're fine on us doing Final Cut, which is actually for the type of project that we're doing a better solution, because we're essentially doing 1.5 to 2.5 minute videos. And it just is going to be a good workflow overall, but it's not exclusive for sure. Right. And by the way, just a little comment to something that you were talking about, both of you, on drives, that I think is probably without saying, but because so many things are named the same when they're generated by camera systems and everything else, it really is a good thing to get in the habit of, both from a folder structure standpoint and just sort of a file name structure standpoint, to add your date to the files that you're creating, because having that physical month, day, and year can sometimes be the difference between, you know, finding 10 or 20 of the same folder with the same name. Obviously, putting the client name helps as well, but I think that date format, regardless, can help a lot.
And that helps, I would say, more when you come back to a project months down the line and all the media's moved around, because all these bits of software are pretty good. Even though they've got matching file names, they'll still import both versions of it and they'll not get confused. The problem is when you start opening that project again and it goes, oh, I need to relink the media, and then it's file 001 and you've got 50 of them. Yeah, that's when it's really good. And when you are doing that and you're bringing stuff in and you're renaming things and you're backing stuff up, using Resolve has a brilliant, so even the free version of Resolve, it's brilliant for running backups. So you can, often with me, it's in a hotel room, it's quite late at night, that will put it onto 2 separate drives, do one, then it'll do the other, then it'll check some of them both, and you wake up in the morning and everything's fine, and it'll tell you if it isn't. So a good little tip for that. And then once we've chosen the software that we're in, if the last one I've done was on Resolve, but I'm normally between Resolve and Premiere, depending on what it is that I'm doing. If there's going to be a lot of graphic elements into it, I find Premiere works better, although Premiere performance-wise tends to fall over a lot more than Resolve does. On the same system, Resolve just seems to work an awful lot better, and particularly if you're dealing with raw footage, works great in Resolve, whereas Premiere, it really seems to struggle along. And then it's a case of before the edit, just kind of conforming everything. If you've got a lot of off-speed stuff, so you've got a lot of slow-mo stuff, just setting everything to the same frame rate before you start the cut. And that saves me loads of times having to go back and go, no, that was supposed to be slow-mo, I need to knock it down at 25%. Doing that in the bins before you start assembling things on your timeline saves you loads of time. Do the edit, I then grade it, working both bits of software on the grade, and then output. So this is where I want to come back to talking about Frame.io. So I normally then will upload 264 files to Vimeo, and I've been using that for years, that I'll then send that to client. So Vimeo is great in that you can put the thing up there, you can lock it, so no one else can see it other than the people that have got the link. They can then give me their feedback on it. We make the amends. We keep going backwards and forwards until we get to a point where we're happy. And then in the same way that you're talking about with Frame.io, I have a master file, which can be a really big, that can be a ProRes that goes up onto there. And they can then download the original file. Plus they can do all their compressed versions that Vimeo have produced as well, which is normally pretty good. So you can have that as your one-stop shop for client download. Now, Frame.io, to me, seems to do pretty much all of that. But I have a problem in that my website is all kind of designed to have all its videos hosted on Vimeo. So that's the only reason I've just paid them money again. But I need to move it over.
So, I mean, Frame.io, some of the advantages potentially are, though Vimeo may have this, versioning. So, so client, if you want them to, can just quickly go back and forth and check the different versions of the videos that you're posting. And they're basically 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're stacked onto each other. You know, the commenting, you know, being time code specific, and the annotation tools are huge for me. Because what we do is we invite collaborators into that particular Frame.io project, and then we don't move forward with anything with that video until we have consolidated feedback from each of the collaborators. So it's all being stored in that one thing. I can download the file. Now Vimeo may do all of this, but it's just sort of so maybe it is as effective for the workflow that you have. I've found that I've been with Frame.io since day one. We tried some older systems. There was a company out in Boston many years ago that was trying to do this. I think that the bandwidth of the internet just wasn't quite there at the point in terms of what to do. So it might just be that it is a good solution for you. You know, we have, at least in terms of me, no confidence in terms of long-term viability of any company that exists that is out there. And that's not because I don't trust the company. It's just that the way this industry moves, it's very fickle. So there can be a buyout, there can be a change, there can be a whatever it can be. I mean, sometimes it can just be that the person who's at the helm of the ship has a major life change or passes away, and it completely changes the whole company. So I don't necessarily have the confidence that any one of these companies, Vimeo, Frame.io, whoever it is, are going to be my long-term solution. Caleb's probably, you know, putting confidence into a company that's going to be around longer than most because of how big they are. And for the amount of content Caleb's creating, $60 a month is not a lot, but for other people, $60 a month is a lot of money. So I think it really depends. Yeah.
So Frame.io on a base account, what's that costing now?
For like a real base account, I think you're $45 a month. So it's a lot more expensive than you're paying for Vimeo, because you're probably on a pro account for $200 a year US. Is that right or wrong?
Yeah, well, that's what I have been on, and I've downgraded it to whatever the middle one was, because now I'm just saying I'm only using it for client review and for hosting my own stuff that then goes onto my own website or for my own marketing. But everything else I'm using Dropbox for. So when I'm shuttling big files backwards and forwards and end projects, that all goes via Dropbox, which is much better value. So I've downgraded it, which they were all right about, actually. They downgraded it to the one that costs, I can't remember what it is, like £60 a year, $80, $90 a year, something like that.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, you know, that's a great. It's work for me for what I'm doing, but it's not necessarily the right solution for all workflows. And if they're giving you that functionality that you need, then there's no reason. I just kind of felt like I was back up against the wall. I was a Vimeo Pro customer for a long time, and I just felt like the quality of
There he is.
What happened?
You just kind of burped for a sec, but you're good.
That's because Vimeo heard me. That's why.
Yeah.
So that's all. We don't need to digress. I mean, we're already at 10 to the hour, so I think we need to get some questions and do that. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So,
have we found any?
Oh, shout out to France, new listener, viewer in the car, getting them through traffic time. So thank you very much for starting to come by the show a couple of weeks ago. So just a shout out.
Excellent. Thank you so much. JO3, is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, JO3.
Nice. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. People are talking about the cost to do backups and stuff. Yeah, I would totally agree. Like $60 sounds like a lot, depending on what your size is. But I mean, if you haven't already, I would consider thinking about what happens if your house burns down or your studio burns down or there's a flood. Because then that $60 a month starts to sound pretty, pretty nice. As long as you have the speed too, that's a whole nother thing. Comcast and these companies are starting to limit bandwidth, which sucks unless you go with a business account. Anyway, yeah, it's getting cheaper though. It's amazing to me.
Yeah,
it's so interesting what that whole thing
at $4 a terabyte a month. Yeah.
What's $4 a terabyte a month? Glacier. Oh, AWS, right. Jim's breaking up there. Vimeo did hack Jem. Oh gosh.
So while Vimeo are messing with Jem, I've got a question for you. So the thing that worries me in my ultra paranoid mind about the cloud storage that you're paying a monthly subscription for. So I fall off my motorbike. I hit my head. I've got amnesia. I'm in hospital for 6 months. What do they do with your data if you say like you have a period of time, 2-3 months, where something goes wrong, the banking system goes.
Oh, right.
Something like that happens. Do they delete it? Do they hang on to it for a period of time before you reconnect? That's kind of my biggest worry with cloud storage.
Right. I haven't researched that because I'm not using it as my only archive. You know, I still have everything on the server.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But I do delete stuff that's, you know, something that like I might access it at some point. So I wouldn't put anything mission critical that's the only place it exists. I trust it there as long as, like you said, payments keep going through. But I would have to research that. It's a good question. I would imagine they have some protocol. I've heard some horror stories of people like literally deleting everything manually and then realizing they made a mistake and like it's still all there. So they must have some like, I don't know how long that period of time is though. So that's a good question. Yeah. And then like we were talking about other, you know, with the other stuff, the Google Drive is more than just storage. Like they do have that kind of backup safety feature. But they also do email. So if you're sick and tired of dealing with, even if you like Gmail and you want a little more, you know, flexibility, it's great to be able to create other accounts, you know, like without having to manually do that. And there's so many other things, but yeah.
Rimrock's answered the question about what happens if you stop paying.
Oh, really? Well, there he is.
Yeah. It's
auctioned off to the highest bidder. There you go. Yeah. And no one should go out and upload all their proposals and all their tax documents. Don't do that. I'm only talking about like video files that take a ton of space and, you know, the edits and all that stuff. I'm not putting any, you know, I'm not one of those guys who's like, you know, everything's up there that I've ever been a part of, because I'm not on board with that. But yeah.
Yeah. But it's just going to get worse and worse. And we had this conversation about 8K and
yeah, this
camera's appeared recently. I already have right behind me here, there's a drawer that's just full of these things.
Right.
And you know, I had an inquiry today from a client who something I shot like 5 years ago. Could you give me those files again?
Yeah. That's where Google would be great, because you can just dump it up there. If you know, if the client one-off asks you down the road, you know, yeah.
If you haven't stopped paying for it and they've auctioned it off, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What else we got?
Alexa's already looking through your videos. Let's see here. Yeah, hit us with the questions, guys, if you have any. I'm looking for questions. Lots of talking here, which is great. I love that.
Lots of feedback about different
Backblaze.
options.
Do you guys use Backblaze?
No.
Either of you? No. Okay.
No.
Do
you?
I do. Because $5 a month, unlimited backup for your machines and anything attached to it.
But you have to just pay like a one-off the whole, and then you get the whole thing back. You can't use it by just file by file. That's right.
I believe that is correct. I think you can schedule to have something downloaded. It's not like Dropbox, but if your house burns down, they'll essentially mail you a drive with everything on your machines and hard drives attached. That's what's really cool. So if you've got a RAID hooked up to your machine, you can put Backblaze on that machine and have 8 to 100 terabytes of whatever's on that drive backed up. But it does take time.
What happens if you're pulling drives in and out, like I guess most of us do all the time?
It just picks up. It'll actually send you an email saying, "Hey, we noticed this is missing. You want to plug it back in, please?"
Right.
And then if you buy a new computer, you can have it inherit old backups. So it's not perfect, but it's for $5 a month, it's phenomenal.
No, it's great. It is good.
But yeah, you gotta have the juice for it to go up.
So am I here again?
You are.
You
look great. You sound great.
Vimeo got you.
It's windy as F here, but I don't know what's going on. But I will say that with just a few minutes left, and there are some other questions coming down the pike. There's some questions about the S1 from Panasonic. Thoughts on ProRes RAW, which I shot an episode about today. I think it might be a good idea, gentlemen, for us to have a conversation next week about this whole, not just ProRes RAW, but maybe we talk a little bit about Blackmagic RAW, and we talk a little bit about some of our thoughts and feelings about what's happening in the mirrorless space, especially with the announcement yesterday from Atomos with ProRes RAW over HDMI. So if Caleb, I think you're hosting next week, if you would be open to the idea of us making that conversation, unless our crew that comes and hangs out doesn't want us to, that'll probably take us into talking about some different manufacturers. It'll talk a little bit maybe about the S1, S1R, and things like that. Any thoughts on that, gentlemen?
As long as Part-Time Films will allow it, I'm totally down.
Yeah, I think that's it's good. It's definitely up for that.
I like it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is a lot going on, and I think that it's going to rapidly happen that in the next 3 to 6 months that the way we look at the mirrorless space is going to change, and we're going to have a lot of conversations about when do you go digital cinema, when do you go mirrorless, and is there a benefit to going with a compressed RAW format? Like, I'm glad Part-Time Films understands our humor. Is there a benefit or not? And I think that different people will be surprised at maybe what the three of us have to say about that, and kind of where we're thinking things are going. And we'd love to hear everybody else's thoughts about it as well. I mean, if anything,
very topical.
Very topical.
Do you all hate it?
For me personally, I've just spent like the last, when I'm in between edits this last week, entirely dealing with kind of raw workflow and changing things over to be mainly shooting that. So yeah, this is a good thing to talk about at the moment.
Interesting.
All right.
I made the mistake of shooting a load of raw, and then you love it, and then I'm gonna have to figure out how to make this work for everything.
Then you sell your Tesla and all your motorcycles to buy hard drives for all of it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, exactly. CFast cards. That's it. Everything I own, CFast cards.
So Zach 8133, just ping me through the C47 website, and then we can talk a little bit about IRE values for exposing skin tones. And I'll have that conversation with you later on.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
So
go ahead, Ben.
We've hit it. It's it is now 1 a.m. here, which is high time that I went off to my bed.
Yes.
So,
Some rest.
gentlemen, sign off. Good night to you.
Oh, go ahead, Caleb. You're up.
Thank you guys for joining. Lots of great questions. Let's keep this up. We'd love to have you again back next week, same time, 6 p.m. I'm sorry. Yeah, 6 p.m. Eastern. Wow,
Yep.
I need to work on that. Love you all. Part-time. Thank you for getting behind our ideas, and God bless America. Jem.
Amazing. I will. That was amazing. I would just everybody, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please do so. More importantly, make sure you ring the bell so that you get notifications. I'm doing premieres every week of Gearbox 2.0, noon Eastern every Wednesday, and then 6 p.m. for Camera and Flask. Caleb's going to write up a little title and description for next week's episode, which will have something to do with RAW and HDMI and more about where we see all this mirrorless goodness going in the future. And I would like to thank not only everybody who's shown up, but of course my two partners in crime for this week. And get some rest, Ben, and please give us a send-off.
Yeah. All right. So as ever, it's been a joy spending time with both of you and with everyone on the chat. It's amazing that everyone comes back every week, and it's just, a joy to do. It really is. So good night to you both. Good night to you all. See you soon, and fuck Brexit.
All right. Good night.
There we go.